Well, hello everybody. Peace, salam, and shalom. Welcome to our weekly Interfaith Explorations, hosted by the Interfaith Center and co-sponsored by the Cobb Institute in California. Along with me is my dear friend and co-moderator, Dr. J. McDaniel, who also serves on the board of the Cobb Institute. Today we have a special guest who is very dear to me, my heart, and my work, Imam Mohammed Nawaz. But before we go to him, I want to give a brief kind of an intro to our theme of the day. So, our topic today is S for Sacred Sounds. And I want you all to think about it that what does a religion sound like? And I know it might sound like a weird question until we remember the sounds of a chant, a Hindu chant, or a prayer wheel, or a temple chant, call to prayer from a nearby mosque. If you're living in a Muslim country, you can hear them all the time. And sometimes, if you're living in a pluralistic culture, all these sounds mixed up. So, all of them have very distinctive characters, and they can also ring very differently in different parts of the world. But they do have a very spiritual foundation, feel, and inspiration to them. And most of the wisdom traditions that I have studied, they have kept a very special place for making music, singing, and space for these sounds within their tradition, because sound, music, and words can take us where teaching cannot, the prose teaching cannot. And in some traditions, sound is a way to heal, especially for Sufis, because I'm a Sufi. For me, it's interesting, it's important, it's inspiring, it's motivating. And I remember when I was growing up, when I was really a young girl, I did not know much about my religion. We would travel a lot with my family to different places, and sometimes we would stop at Sufi shrines. And when we would stop at a shrine, not one of the thing, the thing that fascinated me was the music that would be playing there. And trust me, I would not be able to understand a word of it because most of it was in local languages and dialects. But I loved it. And I would actually sit down and listen to it for as long as my family would be at the shrine of that Sufi saint. And I really wanted to actually share some of that with you. But I was talking to Jay. I was really scared to get something from YouTube because last time I shared John Lennon's song, and my video got blocked on YouTube because it was copyright material. But I do want to share some of the images and maybe my own personal videos from some of the shrines that I visit. So this is a shrine that I just visited in 2019. In my trip to Pakistan in 2019, I went there. It's of a Sufi saint. And when I went there, of course, I listened to the music. And what happens is once you go to the shrines, what you will see is that there are people who will be sitting there playing music all the time. Outside the shrine, you will find people who will be sitting and playing music. So let me find one of those videos and give you a feel of it if I can. No, these are all the photos. So yeah, maybe this one. meditation. I'm having technology challenges today, as you can tell. So I don't know if you saw that, but I was in that video sitting in a black shawl. So one of the things that really brought me close to my religion was listening to the music, although I couldn't understand the words. But for me personally, it's not only Islamic or Muslim or Sufi music. Any form of religious music has always inspired me and moved my hearts in ways that I cannot explain in words. And I am going to share one more video with you to explain that. So, this is from my visit to Pakistan last year in October. I went to a small town called Kartarpur, and that's the town where it's famous because the founder of Sikhism, and his name is Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism was believed to have died there, and there is a big shrine which is made in his memory. So I went and visited this shrine. And since it was COVID, everything was closed. And normally there are thousands and thousands of people here from all over the world because this is the second holiest shrine to Sikhs in the world. But due to COVID, everything was closed. We got a special permission from somebody for me to go and visit. But what you can hear in this video is the sounds of the worship and the prayer, the musical recitations from the background. And I just sat there for a couple of hours and just listened to it, not understanding a single word, but just letting my heart move with it. So here is the Sikh shrine in Pakistan. जिन नर नाम तिहारो कहा नारद दोष शोक तेरा खड़ग खेत में शरण तिहारी आप हाथ देते हो भारी सरब ठोर मोह सहाई दोष दोख तेरे हो बचाई खड़ग खेत में शरण तिहारी आप हाथ देते हो भारी सरब ठोर मोह सहाई दोष दोख तेरे हो बचाई. Okay, here we go. That were two of my short videos that I wanted to share. And with that, while I highlight Imam Nawaz, Jay, would you like to add something to our theme of sacred sounds?
I'll say one thing, but then I want to turn it back very quickly. If you think about the spiritual alphabet, A is for attention, B is for beauty, C is for connection and compassion, D for devotion, W for wonder, M for mystery, S for silence, T for transformation, etc. You can ask, what do they sound like? And each letter speaks to a form of emotional wisdom. There's something wise about attention. There's something wise about a sense of beauty. There's something wise about silence. There's something wise about wonder. There's something wise about shadow, owning the suffering and side of our lives, and also the sinfulness, being honest about that. So I think maybe you can think of music. No, I'm going to say sound. I think you can think of different sounds as awakening an awareness of some of those modalities. And certainly that's what I hear, what I'll hear shortly when I hear Imam, because I've heard him chant before and we're in for a real blessing. It doesn't matter if you don't know the meaning of the words, it's the sound, which reminds me of a quotation from John Lennon. John Lennon was once asked, what did you think about Elvis Presley? And he said, I love Elvis. And they said, why did you love Elvis Presley? And he said, because it was the first time I ever felt anything. And you can imagine maybe a young child growing up in maybe a colder environment and not feeling the vitalities of life. But in Elvis, it was the first time he ever felt anything. So just a note to say that sound functions in our lives, both religious and secular, as an invitation to emotional intelligence. With that, back to Sophia, and I can't wait to hear Imam.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Nawaz. You are on mute. So everybody, here's Imam Mohammed Nawaz. He's originally from India. He's born, raised, and trained in India. He's a master reciter and a teacher of Arabic language and a teacher of Quran. Quran is the holy book for Muslims, and there is a lot of emphasis on reciting Quran in a very specific way, which is quite musical. I don't understand the science of it. I don't understand the art of it. I cannot speak to it. He will talk to us about it because this is what he does. But what I can tell you is that when I listen to him reciting, it just moves me in ways that I can't explain. So Imam Mohammed Nawaz is also the spiritual leader here at Medina Institute, which is the mosque that I lead. I welcome you to our class, Imam Mohammed Nawaz.
Thank you so much, Sophia said. It's my honor and pleasure to be here. And
okay, so I'm going to give the mic to you for the next 20, 25 minutes, 20 minutes, let's say, to share your story with us, how you were influenced by, why did you even become a reciter? How did this journey begin for you? And then once you're done with your story, then we will have questions and answers. We'll open it up to the whole class.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, hello, and salam to everyone. May peace be upon you all. Hope everyone is doing well with the families. And may God protect you all from all the evil in this world. And may God illuminate our hearts with the spirituality. And thank you so much for the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my spiritual journey that was sort of based on the sacred sounds with you all. And I truly appreciate it from my heart. So I'm Imam Mohammed Nawaz, and I was born and raised in India, Hyderabad, the south part of India. Actually, my spiritual journey has been influenced by three things, or three sounds, I would say. So the first one is Naat. Naat is basically, it's a spiritual song that we sing for to praise the Prophet Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, or other prophets. He's a Prophet Jesus and Abraham and Noah and all of them. And then the second sound that has affected me spiritually a lot, or enriched my heart spiritually, is the Qawwali. Qawwali also is it's a Sufi song basically. And as Sophia introduced you all, that most of the time the Qawwali is being performed at the shrines of the great saints of the Sufis or Sufism. The third sound that has enriched my heart spiritually, that has driven me closer to Allah, the God subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the holy book, Quran. And I'll go through like how, and there are different stories in my life for every single sound. So my journey started when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, when I started understanding things. What my mother used to do is every Friday, since the Friday is the holy day for us, so early morning we would wake up and my mother would cleanse the house and everything. And then, back then we used to have tape records. So she would have some of the cassettes that she would use in those old tape records. And those cassettes were contains of some of the Qawwali music, as well as some nasheeds and sometimes the Quran. So since then, I sort of loved to listen those sounds just. And at that time, obviously, when I was 4 or 5 years old, I had no clue what they're saying. It is just the rhythm or the melody that they're going through. We just enjoy it. That's how actually I started. And then when we go to pray Friday prayers, so it's a tradition in our village where I was, or in India and many mosques of the Pakistan and India, that after every Friday prayer, people would stand up and we would turn our faces towards the shrine of the Prophet Muhammad, and then we would say, we would send peace and blessings and greetings to Prophet Muhammad in the form of poem or poetry that is very melodious and very sweet, and people become emotional at that time, and it does affect to the heart. When it feels like you're literally standing before the Prophet Muhammad, and you're saying you're greeting him personally, you're greeting him in person. So that's the environment. We do that after every Friday prayers. So that sort of enriches our spirituality and drives us closer to the Prophet Muhammad. So that also had attracted me a lot. Though I was getting late to school because they used to give us break for prayer, and we had to go back to school immediately right after the prayer. So sometimes I would miss my lunch just to attend that gathering. And one of the main reasons I used to attend those gatherings is right after we are done with the sending greetings and everything. Every Friday, 1 or 2 people would bring some sweets to distribute in people who attend it. So I used to skip lunch just to get that sweet. Anyway, then my father passed away when I was 5 years old, and it was my father's desire that one person must be in religious field from our family. So my mother decided to put me in religious school. It's called madrasa. So it's a free education. They provide you food and everything, clothing. Most of the hostels, they would provide all of this. So basically, I grew up in religious culture, where every single day I would spend at least, I would say easily 9 to 10 hours just reciting Quran, the holy book. And I grew up every day singing and chanting the praisings of the Prophet Muhammad and God and the other prophets of the God. So, but the interesting point is, I was not really enjoying them spiritually. I mean, my heart was not really into there. The madrasas, they're sort of very strict in policies and in rules. They would not give us freedom at all. You can't even go out of the building without their permission and all of that. So it was quite hard on me. That's why the chanting and the recitation of the Quran didn't really enrich my heart spiritually. But when I was in madrasa, I was probably 9 years old. So it was in UP, Uttar Pradesh is a state in India. It's the north part of India. So there was a shrine close to my hostel. It was probably like a mile away from our hostel, but it was on the same road. So they would give us break from 4 p.m. after the third prayer, which is called Asr prayer, and till the sunset. So what we used to do at that time, during that hour and a half time, we would, all the kids, we would walk all the way to that shrine, as Sister Sophia has shown you in the first video, that these singers are the qawwali. Qawwali it's a spiritual music or spiritual songs dedicated to the Sufi saints and also the Prophet and the household of the Prophet and his companions, to others also. So every Thursday, they used to have this qawwali group. They would come with all the instruments, and they would sing the qawwali. They would chant qawwali for almost 2 hours. So we were just sitting there in that shrine and listening to them. it would really take away all of our tiredness. It sort of refreshes us and refreshes our mind. So it was beginning, sort of for my spiritual journey. Anyway, so number one, not the first one, the first sound that has affected me, because from my childhood in my family, we had an environment of chanting, singing, as well as in the month of Rabiul Awwal. This month is the month when the Prophet Muhammad was born. So every masjid organizes the programs, events, that every night, 12th night, every night, we would go, all people would come together, 100 people, 150 people. We would just sing poems about the Prophet Muhammad. So I used to take a part in it, and I used to enjoy those gatherings. And we used to wait the entire year for those gatherings. And obviously, every time we listen to, so the Naat is without music, but it is melodious. It's an amazing, it touches to the heart. It's a conversation to the heart. So that's the Naat without music. The second sound that has enriched my heart spiritually was the Qawwali. Subhanallah, it's really interesting. Subhanallah, basically, we used to saying it, which means glory to be God. So we have been listening, and I grew up listening so many Qawwalis, and there are very famous singers such as Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. He was the king of all the singers, and there are many others. Traditionally, we've been listening to them, but again, it did not change me spiritually. It did not enrich my heart. It's just tradition, it's coming from our parents, our family. That's the environment we grew up, but we just enjoyed listening to the music, the melody. But one day, I happened to open the video, play the video on YouTube. The group is called Fanafillah. And this group is the leader of the group is the white Canadian. His name, I don't know his previous name, but his name is Tahir Faridi. And he has the whole team of Qawwali, some of them male, and he also has female in his group. And so this brother, Tahir Faridi, a white Canadian man, he went to Pakistan, and he spent a couple of years in mountains, and also he spent a couple of years with Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and great other singers. And he learned the traditional way of singing Qawwali, and he received the certificates from all the traditional, some of his teachers and all of them, and some of the Sufi Saints as well. And he has literally visited every single shrine in Pakistan and many other shrines, and then he has performed Qawwali. So one of his Qawwali, it's called Ya Mustafa Nurul Huda Thani Tera Koi Nahi, which means, O Mustafa, the chosen one, Nurul Huda, a light of guidance, none is similar to you. So when he chanted this Qawwali and the music he had in it, it affected to my heart. And that's the first time I felt, probably 4 years back. That's when, that the melody of the Qawwali and even the wordings especially, it attracted me a lot. I said, the Urdu, the Qawwali and the Naat is all in Urdu, and there are some things are in Arabic too. I started thinking, this person, the Tahir Faridi, he's a white Canadian man. Urdu is not his language, and Qawwali also is not from his traditions. And he was born and grew up in Canada, but just he went and spent a couple of years learning the traditional way of Qawwali and music, the spiritual music and the sacred sound in Pakistan. And there is a pain in his even music. And the tears started coming out of my eyes. I couldn't hold myself on that day. I just, went in my meditation room and locked up myself. And then I listened to it again and again. It would just make me feeling that I'm standing up right in front of the Prophet Muhammad. It just gives me feeling that I'm in a gathering where the Prophet Muhammad is present. And then I started, getting more attracted to the Qawwali sound. And I also adopted some of their songs. And I also had performed some of the Qawwali by myself in the company of my teacher, spiritual master, the founder of Medina Institute, Dr. Sheikh Mohammed bin Yahya Nainawi. In Atlanta, we had a team, Afghani team. They had this tabla and some other instruments they used for Qawwali. They were Afghani people. We used to enjoy the gatherings once in a while. Anyway, so that was the second sound that has enriched my heart, that sort of has driven me closer to the Prophet Muhammad. I'll just summarize the history of Qawwali, the traditional music, in 1 minute. So this tradition has started probably 700 or 800 years back, when one of the great saint of Sufis, his name is Mu'inuddin Chishti. His actual, he was nicknamed after Gharib Nawaz. He was very generous to poor people. Gharib means the poor. Nawaz means who honors. So he used to honor and take care of the orphans and the poor one. So he became known as Gharib Nawaz. So at that time, when Mu'inuddin Chishti came to India from Sanjar, other countries, so he sort of found out that it was central for Hinduism, and he wanted to, do his dawah work, his presentation. But at that time, people were so addicted to music, and the poems. So he adopted sort of this culture. He is the one. The scholars say that, the historians say that he is the first one who started, but later on, more instruments were added to Qawwali. At the time of Nizamuddin Awliya, also a great Sufi saint, whose grave, his shrine is in Delhi, New Delhi, India. And Gharib Nawaz, his shrine is in Ajmer. Even today, you have, hundreds of thousands of people are visiting on daily basis, especially in this month, the month we are in. Anyway, then, it sort of spread widely in the subcontinent, in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, and some of the other Asian countries in different forms. So that's the brief summary or the history of Qawwali. The third sound that really have, changed sort of my world. So as I mentioned that I grew up, I was, forced to go into the religious school, and but I memorized the whole Quran, the whole holy book of the Quran, when I was 13 years old. And then, it became sort of habit. It became sort of habit for me to be in the religious culture. But again, my heart was not really there. When though I memorized the whole entire Quran and everything, and I had a good voice at that time, and but I didn't really acknowledge that I had an ability of mastering the melodic modes of reciting Quran or chanting Quran. But when I came to United States, Medina Institute, so till that time, I was probably 18 years old. I never enjoyed listening the recitation of the Quran or reciting recitation of the Quran. It was just habitually, because sometimes it was my job to do, or sometimes, it's just I had to do. But I rarely enjoyed, once in a while. But when I came to United States, in the month of Ramadan, our founder, Sheikh Mohammed bin Yahya, he brought one of a great pastor or preach or imam from Medina, the city of the Prophet Muhammad, and his name is Sheikh Muhammad Safar. He brought him to Atlanta, Medina Institute. And just because he came, we used to have, in the month of Ramadan, every night he used to lead the prayers. So we used to have 1,200 visitors, or 1,300, up to 1,500 visitors every night. So the first day, I stood behind him and he was reciting the Quran. And in Ramadan, it's more longer. It's at least 2 hours of worship, 2 hours of recitation every night. So when I stood up behind him, so at this point, I had learned some Arabic. I also was able to understand some of the, meanings of it, but not all of it. So when I stood behind him, it took me to the different world. I lost myself. I didn't realize that I'm standing in Medina Institute and Masjid in Atlanta. So I was really, amazed. I literally enjoyed every single word. And he had an amazing melodic modes. So these melodic modes are called maqamat. So there are their names, every tune has a different name. And different tune is used for different subjects. So if the subject is filled with sorrow or sadness, then there is a tune that we use that is very, sad. It's called maqam saba, the mode saba. And if the verses are talking about happiness, and there is a melodic mode that we use, it's maqam ajam, or another name of another tune that we often use in happiness, it's maqam nahawan. So these things had attracted me a lot. And since then, I started digging into more. I started listening to more other reciters. Especially, I got an honor to spend 6 months with my teacher in the same apartment. Every time, I used to sit with him and enjoy his recitation. I learned a lot of things from him. I also had another teacher from Egypt who has come to Medina Institute. Some of you may be are familiar with him. I also learned some of these melodic modes from him also. That is how, my journey sort of started. I'm still a student of it. I'm still trying to learn more and to reach to the level of perfection where I can enjoy by myself, as well as I also can make others enjoy, make others also gain the closeness of God. And until today, if you listen to some of the videos from Mecca and Medina, even some in United States, some of the reciters, especially if you get a chance to attend mosques on the 27th night of Ramadan, or some nights of Ramadan in the last 10 nights, you will see majority people weeping, literally crying, though majority of them do not understand. It's all that sacred sound, that melody, that rhythm is just affecting their hearts. And the words are, just drowning in their hearts. So that just makes them humble themselves. So this is a brief journey, and this is how these sacred sounds of Nat and Qawwali. Now, traditionally, Qawwali is mostly in Pakistan, and the melodic sounds mostly in Egypt and some of the parts of Saudi Arabia. This is how my journey, the spiritual life is enriched, and I was influenced by the sounds of these three things. And I pray to God that may God give me strength to become more better in them, and to become master in them, to become perfect in them, and to enrich my heart and to uplift my heart spiritually as well as to others. And thank you so much again for giving me this honor.
Thank you so much, Imam Nawaz. Dr. McDaniel will moderate the question answers, but before we open it up to the audience, I would like to ask you to recite us a few verses from Quran, maybe Surah Rahman, and then maybe a few verses from Qasida Burda Sharif. So cover the Quran and also the Nasheed, just a few verses each. You are on mute, Imam Nawaz.
I will recite the most beautiful, every chapter is beautiful in Quran, but this chapter is sort of famous and it's very melodious, the verses of it. So I will use the mode called Ajam. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العظيم. This is the chapter called Surah Al-Rahman. Now, based on the request, I will chant 2 or 3 lines of the poem from Qasida Burda. It's a very famous, well-known poem in the world that is written by Imam Busayri, Sharfuddin Muhammad al-Busayri. He was probably in almost 800 years before. He was a great poet. So it's all in Arabic. It's about the lifestyle or the history of the Prophet Muhammad, biography of the Prophet Muhammad. It starts with the greeting to the Prophet Muhammad. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين من عرب ومن عجم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. Thank you so much.
Imam Nawaz, could you give us a sense of what a qawwali would sound like?
So the qawwali is the naat, the nasheed I just sang in Arabic. The qawwali are same. The only difference is the qawwali contains the music and the musical instruments. The naat or the nasheed about the Prophet, that's also, obviously spiritual. This doesn't contain the music.
I see.
Yeah.
Imam Nawaz, you mentioned several times about Fana Fallah. So I'm going to show everybody who Imam Nawaz is talking about. It's a famous American-Canadian group of singers who traveled to Pakistan to learn about this genre of music from Pakistan, which is Qawwali, and it's basically Sufi devotional music. So let me just share a minute of who they are. And this music is played publicly at Sufi shrines and markets, on roads, just anywhere and everywhere. So this is a famous Sufi shrine where they're playing Qawwali, and Qawwali is not played by or sung by one person. It has to be a group of people. So this is generally how Qawwali would look like, sound like. I'm sorry, not look like, sound like. And you would see them singing. They're sitting outside the shrine and singing outside, and that's how it normally is. And when you see a lot of people doing rituals, that's inside the shrine of the same. This is how they're sitting outside. Sorry about that. So, anyways, just wanted to give you a feel of Qawwali. And Imam Nawaz, this is so interesting that being from South Asia, which is home to Qawwali, you were inspired by an American group who sings Qawwali. But very
I
interesting.
always think about it.
So I have a question. Can the
Yes.
singers be men and women as well?
Yes.
Is that traditional or is that the Canadian American version?
It's a traditional. That's
So
where I
women
get her from.
and they can lead in this prayer, in this music.
Yes, they can. There is no generation. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome, man.
Sufis are very gender egalitarian. So I wouldn't say it for everybody, but Sufis generally are. Because in spiritual realm, men and women are created equally, so they don't differentiate.
Imam, did I understand you correctly when you said that it was 4 years ago that you really felt spiritually uplifted by the music and so on?
Yes, man.
If it's not too personal, I want to know how old you are.
Right now, when I came to United States, I was 20 years old. I came to United States in 2015.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
We had a question from someone about saints and Sufi
Yes.
saints. Would either of you say a word just about the role of saints in this kind of devotional
Can you please repeat the question, sir?
Someone asked a question about Sufi saints.
Yes.
Saints. And I was wondering if either or both of you wanted to say just a word about the role of Sufi saints in this kind of devotional experience.
So the Sufi saints are basically the spiritual leaders, and they have the spiritual connection through their teachers that goes all the way to the household of the Prophet Muhammad and to the Prophet Muhammad. So they sort of transform. So it's more about experience that they do. So maybe Sister Sophia can add more to it.
Yeah, I mean, Sufi saints are basically our spiritual teachers who have learned from their teachers and their teachers in an unbroken spiritual chain all the way to prophet and then to divine God. The teachings are primarily focused on heart, and they are transferred from heart to heart, from generation to generation, primarily experiential learning on how to transform yourself inwardly before you start thinking about all the outward rituals. And we do believe that Islam was, our prophet was a Sufi saint, and Islam was spread by the Sufi saints. And because that's how you change yourself. Generally, art, music, qawwali, meditation, silence, and service. These are the tools that Sufis have used to connect with the people around them. And of course, when they pass away, since there are leaders and we follow them, people would make big shrines around where they have passed away. And those shrines are the places, and you saw one in that Qawwali video. You saw several today. And they're the places where you will find people round the clock, 24 hours a day, just praying with them, praying to them, because we believe souls are alive. And you will have free food all the time, free music all the time. So it's a mixture of culture and tradition both there.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have a comment or a question right now that you would like to ask or say?
Well, I would ask a musical question. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
In the chanting, is there a tonal center, as we might define in Western music, like a key? It seemed like the first chant, you sort of started on the same note and eventually came back, to the same note. But sometimes I listen to the chant and it seems to wander as if there is not a tonal center.
Yeah. So what's happening nowadays, most of the chanters or singers they're copying. They are not going and learning the proper traditional way of music and its notes. So majority of the singers, not many, and the chanters, even the reciters, they are not learning the proper traditional way. That's why they have no proper beginning, no proper ending. So the note they start, they're not able to end at the same note because they did not learn properly traditionally. So this group, I said, the Fanafillah, this is one of the group who actually have learned the proper traditional way. And so that's why there is a difference that people are not able to end up on the same note that they start, because they're just copying from other chanters and reciters.
Nita, you had a question?
I was just wondering how you see this form of meditation, prayer, offering that you're giving to us as a part of healing this really fractured, hurting world.
So can you please repeat that, ma'am? I'm having difficulty with hearing.
I just wonder what you see in your religion and form of prayers that offers healing to the world.
Yes, for sure. Yes, ma'am. It's What many people do, that every time, you know, they are broken or they're in pain or they're in difficulties, if they don't find out any other way, many people do go to shrines and find, you know, peace of the heart. They get this sort of emotional healings there, spiritual healings there. And many people do go to the shrine of the Prophet Muhammad. They go to Mecca. Many people, if they're not able to go anywhere, they just, you know, turn off the lights and they just pray. And, you know, they just listen to some of the reciters, some of the songs. And it definitely, it does, you know, heal people's heart. And it does bring an ease to them.
If I
One
could
thing that Sufi saints have emphasized on, I would say, or not, this is just the basic framework, is they transcend the boundaries of traditional religion, the dogmatic or ritualistic boundaries. So their music, their sounds, their meditation, their prayers is for everybody, and they have made sure of that in their teaching, that they remain very inclusive. And I think that's what we need nowadays in the world, to break those boundaries and create inclusive spaces.
And that's one of the things, even, you know, traditionally in India, Pakistan, when these qawwal or the singers have been chanting and performing qawwali, there are many audience from Christianity as well Hinduism, as well many Muslims there. So it was open for everyone.
I'll ask a follow-up question. And Nita, this may have been part of your question or maybe not. But I can understand that music has a healing power for individuals.
Yes.
And I understand that. Maybe part of Nita's question was also, can chanting have a healing power for a society? For a group of people, not only the individuals, yes, but also for a society. And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what anybody would say, but I think it's a good question. Was that part of your question, Nita? So Sophia or Imam Nawaz, do you understand that question?
Yeah, I
What
do
do you
understand.
think?
the question. Yes. Let's Sophia go first.
I don't know if I can answer this question, but what I do know is that for me, music transcends boundaries always. And that's why I showed you the example of the video of the Sikh temple that I went to in 2019, actually. So I think one of the things that we need, our world is so divided and deeply polarized nowadays, and we are divided with so many different boundaries: race, religion, gender, rich, poor. So we need more and more tools that can bring us together and transcend those boundaries. For me personally, music or actually sounds have done that a lot, in Sikh temples, in Christian churches. So I do think that chanting, and I have been in gatherings where there is chanting and people from different religions and no religions are sitting together and are able to feel that moments of self-annihilation that we Sufis seek for when we are chanting. And nobody is Christian, Muslim, Jewish anymore. They all transcend to that higher level of, they all elevate to that higher level of consciousness where we are all humans. So I personally think, speaking from my own experience, that yes, chanting, music, sound collectively does have that power.
And I also would like to add something to it. And I also personally have experienced that, yes, the chanting and all these, you know, sacred sounds does affect people, because when I was in India, I was, when we used to pray and when we used to come out of the mosque, there are always people from different religion would bring their kids, you know, the babies. They didn't have so many children's hospital at that time. So they would bring their, you know, ill, you know, the babies are sick. So, and the people who would chant inside the mosque, And when they come out, they would blow on those kids. And many parents from different religion, they have told us that after that their kids were healed. And I still remember that there was a huge lane, like at least 10, 15 mothers, women standing with their children after every prayer. So yeah, there is a power, there is a healing for society and community as well in it. I believe it, yes.
You know, there was a festive, I think all of us, when we saw the Qawwali in particular, there was a festive dimension. There was a kind of joyfulness to it. And that's one of many moods, and it's a wonderful, not the only mood, but there was a festiveness. Sometimes, and I may be wrong, when I hear the chanting of certain Quranic sutras, I hear something different. It's not so much the festive, it's a kind of more solitary, more sometimes lonely, not in a bad sense, but in a good sense. And so I do wonder if different sounds in Islam don't evoke different spiritual sensitivities. On the festiveness, I have to say I was just a little jealous, or a lot jealous, because I have to pay money to go to places that have that much fun, and they're kind of punctuated in society. It's almost like on any given day, you can go to one of these Sufi shrines and partake of the better side of a really nice festive concert, with children included, family friendly. That's what I felt.
That's true.
I know that from a teacher and a musician's point of view, at least for myself, when I remember songs from my youth and from teenage and college days, I don't tend to forget their melodies or their lyrics. The music tends to transport me to a different time in my life. And as a former teacher, I do know also, and I'm sure all of you do, that children or adults or anyone learn very well if a concept is put into music, be it math, science, whatever, because of the melody and because of the words. And music is such a wonderful, wonderful tool. And I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, ma'am. There's also, I mentioned that one of the first one who brought sort of this qawwali into subcontinent, the concept of qawwali was Mu'inuddin Chishti, whose nickname was Gharib Nawaz. His shrine is in Ajmer, Rajasthan, in India. He had a student named Qutbuddin. So one day he was in the gathering of the qawwali, and during that gathering, during the chanting, he went into spiritual state, and he was in that spiritual state for probably 19 or 20 days. And then within the same spiritual state, he actually passed away. So there is a strong, power in that melody, actually. Obviously, the wordings also are there. Yeah.
I think that's a good segue into our closing, because it's time. It's one. I wish this session would never end because it's my favorite topic, and I'm going to actually go and listen to a lot of qawwalis as soon we hang up. But I think this is an important thing that I quickly want to mention before we close, that within the practice of qawwali and Sufism, what Sufis try to do is they try to, through this music, through this devotional music, and I bet it's there in other wisdom traditions as well, they try to attain these higher levels of consciousness. They try to invoke those states with this music. And in that state of spiritual intoxication, if I may say, we call it fana, which is translated as self-annihilation in God. So this is what they are seeking through music, to self-annihilate themselves in God. And if they get into that spiritual state, that altered spiritual state, then they produce great poetry, music, writings, and that poetry is again used to produce even more kawali. And the word, the actual word for kawali, we are saying kawali, which is a traditional word, but that word is sama. And sama means actually listening. So I don't want to go away without saying that there are two very important aspects of this genre, of this devotional music. One is actually singing in a group, and the other is listening. And that's where the name sama comes from. And sama is actually a mystical approach towards listening. So you listen, which takes you into the deep forms of silence, and then you chant. And then you listen, and then you chant till you're transformed into that mystical trance in which you feel moments of union with God. And that's what Imam Nawaz was talking about, the spiritual state. And it's really hard to explain a Sufi's way of the heart with Qawwali. So I want to close on this poem by Rumi. I think it does it. It's called Music and Silence by Rumi, who is one of the greatest spiritual saints in Islam. And it goes like this. Lovers, oh lovers, union is here. The meeting we have wanted, the fire, the joy, the passion, the union, it's here. Let sadness and any fear of death leave the room. The sun's glory has come back. Wind shakes our bells, and we're counters in your hand, passing easily through. Music begins. The sound begins. Your silence deepens that. Were you to put words with this, we would not survive this song. Your silence deepens that. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, Imam Nawaz, for being here today. I hope you all have a great week ahead, and we will be back with our next session next week, which is the second last in this whole series. Hope to see you all next week.